Feeling so alive, summer living flame, we're gonna fly. Go, 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 oh, shout it out loud. In the summer sun, we're a summer loving crowd. Talking Brazil ball.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Talking Brazil Ball, the show all about Brazilian football. We're here for a very special edition this week. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, George. How are you doing this week, George? All good?
Yeah, not bad, James. Thank you. I'll say to everybody, benvido e terça-feira Talking Brazil Ball. So welcome. It's Tuesday. It's Talking Brazil Ball.
Yeah.
Como va, James?
Como va? Well,
Como
yeah,
va?
not so bad, actually. Yeah, I'm on holiday this week, so not working, which is always a bonus, isn't it? So yeah, not too bad at all. I mean, unfortunately, it's fallen on a week where we've had no Brasileirão to talk about. No, it is the international break, I'm afraid. George, have you been managed to catch any of the international action? England, of course, had the first game under a new manager, didn't they? Have you been able to catch any of that? And obviously Brazil as well.
I did watch the game, actually, James, and there's another game on tonight, isn't there? Of course, England-Finland at Wembley, it's football. I'll be watching it, no doubt. So, yeah, and Brazil as well had a good win, didn't they, as well? I mean, yeah, we'll wait and see. I think they play again tonight, do the James, I think?
No, tomorrow night, I think it is. Wednesday
tomorrow night? Yeah, I cannot keep up with it, you know what I mean? There seems so many, and obviously doing my Leeds channel as well and trying to keep across all of our players playing as well in the various different countries. So I'm getting a bit confused with it all, to be fair. I think a lot of our lads are playing tonight, actually.
Yeah, there's always a lot to keep on top of, isn't there, from a club perspective, make sure there's no injuries and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that all the Brasileirão teams will be no different. I don't think there's probably that many really of them off. In terms of kind of English football, probably in Serie A, there's not as many internationals at the minute, but either way, they do pause the season. So obviously, given that we usually do a bit of a roundup of the Brasileirão week that was and have a look into various different aspects of that, we don't have anything to talk about this week, George. So I'm sure everybody was out there was wondering how we're going to fill the time, and we're actually going to do a bit of a roundup of the season so far. So we're going to look at the Serie A season. We're going to do a little breakdown of each individual club and how we rate their season so far and where they're kind of up to against kind of expectations. So if that sounds good, then stick around. We're going to do each team individually. So we are going to have a little go on all of the different sides. So George, is there anything you want to say on that before we kick off with bottom of the table Atletico Goianense?
Not really, James. It's resumo. It's a roundup of all the teams in the league. So yeah, no, let's get going. Let's get cracking. I'm looking forward to just having a bit of a review, and pausing the season allows us to do that. So yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, we haven't really kind of had a chance to take stock. I know we have had pauses in the past, but there wasn't really. It wasn't very long into the season. Obviously, we had that break for the adverse weather, or the terrible weather in Rio Grande do Sul. But there wasn't really enough evidence to kind of do a roundup. So it's a good point about 2/3 of the way through the season to get into that. So as I said, we're going to go from bottom to top, George. So we'll start with Atletico Goianense. So.
Yep.
Just going to have a little bit of a review of where they're up to, and then I'm going to ask you for a rating out of 10. And I'm probably going to give one as well. So, as I said, Atletico Goianense, George, it's been a really poor season for them so far. They are 20th, bottom of the Brasileirão. They were 4th in Serie B last year, so they were the bottom of the promoted teams that came up. In terms of the Copa do Brasil, they did make it through to the round of 16 before losing to Vasco da Gama. They are obviously not in any continental competition, so that's the only football that they've been playing. We're not going to talk about the regional championships because they were a long time ago really now. In terms of manager, they are on their 3rd manager of the season, George, so never really a marker of a successful team. First of all, it was Jair Ventura who went into the season as manager. Once he was sacked in June, he was replaced by Anderson Gomez, who was the interim manager, so not a full-time manager. Wagner Mancini then came in July, but he only lasted about a month, and he was sacked in August. And then Umberto Lauza now is the manager tasked with keeping them up and getting them off the bottom of the table. The top scorer so far is Luis Fernando, who we have mentioned quite a bit, actually. He's been a scorer of some very good goals, and he's got 6 goals in the Brasileirão this season. So, bearing all that in mind, George, what's your rating for this season? I know you've pulled up a table. You predicted a full table, didn't you? So, where are Goianense based on where you backed them to finish, and what would you rate for their season so far?
Well, they're actually doing worse, James, than I predicted. I mean, I predicted them to get relegated. I predicted them to come in 19th position. So they're pretty much on track. And relegation looks likely, doesn't it, for them, to be fair. As far as a rating out of 10, 1. You know, they're right at the bottom. Only Fluminense, incidentally, James, have scored less goals than Atletico Goianense, Gio. 21 goals, James. Fluminense have 20. It's just not been good enough. They've scored some lovely goals, like you said, and Fernando has been one to watch, hasn't he, potentially for them. I know they've got a Joel Campbell in, haven't they, recently, and he scored 1 or 2, I think. But look, they're going down. Too many managerial changes, like you said. I don't think the lad in charge right now. Who's it? Sorry, James Lauza. Yes, he's just come in, hasn't he? Really, he's quite an experienced coach, but I don't think I'd be very, very surprised if he ended up being the coach at the end of the season. That's how sort of bad it is for them at the moment. It's his second spell in charge of Gio, isn't it, Lauza? But yeah, 1, right at the bottom. I mean, it's expected, but still really poor.
Yeah, they are 9 points adrift of safety at the minute. It does look very, very difficult for them to pull themselves out of that. 13 games to go. I think you're being a little harsh. I mean, I'm giving them a 3 out of 10 just based on they would have been expected to go down. I think 1 seems, reserved for me for a team who have really kind of plummeted against expectations. I think a 3 out of 10 for me would be a little more fair. But anyway, like you said, difficult times ahead, I'm sure, for them, and disappointing way for them to bounce back to Serie A. Anyway, George, moving on, let's waste no time in getting up the table to headier climes. Cuiabá are in 19th, which is not, a great position for them to be in. They were 12th last year, George, so they are kind of way down on their finish last year. In terms of the Copa do Brasil, they lost in round 3 to Goiás, of course, second division Goiás. So that was a little bit of a disappointment as well. They were in the Copa Sudamericana this year, which I think was possibly the first time ever. But they lost in the round of 32, so they did make it through the group stage, which, fair enough. And they did make it, had some success, but they did lose to Palestino, the Chilean side. In terms of manager, they're another side who are now on their 3rd full-time manager, George. So Luis Fernando Lubel started the season, but he was sacked before long in May. In came Petit, and he was there only a couple of months as well, May till August, although it felt like longer, really. And he was only just recently sacked, wasn't he? And the third man through the door is Bernardo Franco. So he's the man tasked now with getting them up the table. In terms of top scorer, George, you'll be pleased to hear that our man, the Paraguayan Viking, Isidro Pitta, is the top scorer in the Brasileirão with 7 goals, which is a pretty respectable tally so far. So, again, a season rating for Cuiabá, please, George.
Well, again, like you said, James, it's managerial merry-go-round again for Cuiabá. Was you say 4? They're on the 4th manager. It's just
third permanent.
You just can't have any kind of continuity with that sort of changing in manager all the time. Like you said, they did get through in the Sudamericana to a stage maybe that most didn't expect them to. And obviously, like you said, Pitta at the top with the 7 goals. He'll get a move, I think, to somewhere else, because I do think Cuiabá will go down again. I did incidentally have them to go down, and I had them in 18th position, James. So they're not far off again. And yeah, as terms of rating, 2.
2. God,
You
you
know,
are being harsh with these ratings.
I mean, but they're in the relegation zone. Lots of managerial changes. I was going to go 3, but then I thought, well, they're on a horrible run of form. Really, it's just not been good enough.
No, well, I mean, I've given them a 4 out of 10 just because I think, I think they overperformed last year in 12, to be honest. And
Yeah,
they're not. I mean, they're not like Gio. They're not a million miles away. They are 5 points off safety. It's still, a bit to make up, isn't it? But I think Sudamericana performance is something to hold on to, and they didn't bomb out straight away of the Copa. So yeah, I think a 4, but I can understand you going for a 3. Did you say you think they will still go down, Kuyaba?
I said 2, James, but
A 2, sorry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I do. I think they will go down. I don't. They just that form just really hit them really, really badly. I mean, maybe they're coming out of it just now, but they've just got the new manager, little manager bounce. I think we'll see the end of it soon, to be honest with you. But they went on a horrible run of, no wins in quite a number of games in all competitions, and yeah, I do think they'll go down. And I think you predicted them also to go down as well at the start of the
I
season.
think so. I think it was based on, obviously, the manager left, didn't he, at the start of the season, Antonio Oliveira, who done very well.
Yeah.
Obviously, didn't really succeed at Corinthians, but I think we felt that might just rock them a little bit, and I think it probably did. And yeah, I don't see them staying up either, to be honest. It's a bit of a shame. I've come to like them a little bit, but anyway, somebody has to go, don't they? And I think you're probably right with Cuiabá, but. Anyway, let's continue up the table, George, because it's depressing, isn't it, talking about these ones kind of towards the bottom.
Well, yeah, we've got to start somewhere, though.
Well, yeah, it's, there's plenty of intrigue still, isn't there? So up in 18th, then, one place above Cuiabá is Vitória, George. So Vitória were first. They were the champions of Serie B last year, so perhaps, again, maybe would have been expecting to do slightly better. In the Copa do Brazil, they came in at the 3rd round and they went straight out to Botafogo. And again, they have changed the manager during the season. So they started with Leo Conde, who was sacked in May, and they brought in Thiago Carpini, who was obviously at Sao Paulo, who is doing a decent job, in fits and starts. And their top scorers so far are William and your man, George, I know you like Alejandro. So they've both got 5 goals in league this season. So once again, your thoughts on Vitória's performance so far?
Again, I think, James, it's got to be expected, really. I mean, they've spent so long out of the first division. I mean, five seasons out of the Serie A, first season back in there for and it was again to be expected. I mean, I think if I have a look at my predicted one again, I did have them down, James, in 17th position. So, again, not too far off there. And I do think they're going to go down as well. Carpini's done a really good job, I think, and he's levitated them up, because if you remember when he came in, I think they barely had any points, and he seems to have got a few wins under the belts and having them a little bit more, confidence. Like you said, Alejandro, I do like him. Obviously, he's got technical ability, like we know, and I just don't think it'll be good enough in the end in terms of ratings. Rate the season so far, I'd probably go with, again, there wasn't too much expectation on them to stay up, I don't think. So I'm going to go with, I think, about a 4 here, because, they've probably done about as expected. I think Carpini, regardless of whether they get relegated or not, I think he's got them in a good standing. They've got some decent players there. And I think out of all the ones potentially that was spoke about so far, definitely I think they've got the most to just maybe get out. But like I said, I don't think they will. But they've got the potential to push it to the very last, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and then like you're saying, Carpini, they've got a manager who I think got promoted with Juventude last season. So he knows what the second division's all about. They shouldn't panic if they do go down. And like you say, he is a bit of a bright spot. I mean, there is still time for that to change, and in that they might just think he's not the right man moving forward. But I agree. I think they've had a decent year. They've made a decent fist of it in recent times anyway. They're still in the mix. They might still stay up. So for me, I think you're being a bit more fair there, I'd put them as a 5 out of 10 just because they're not a million miles off. And again, I think it was the playing more or less as expected. So that's Vittoria. So still around the mix, like you said, probably the most positive review that we've given so far. I don't think a positive one will be coming, George, because Corinthians are sitting in 17th. So they were 13th though last year. I mean, it's worth pointing that out that they were in a similar position last year. It's not a Fluminense situation. They were struggling a bit last year as well, George. I think the positive for them is that they've done well in the cups. They're still in the Copa do Brazil. They're in the quarterfinal. They did lose the first leg 2-1 to Juventude, but they're still in there with a shout. They're also in the quarterfinal against Fortaleza in the Copa Sudamericana, so they're still fighting in those cups, maybe to the detriment of the league form. And of course, they are, as I mentioned there, another team who have changed the manager. So Antonio Oliveira did start the season with Corinthians, but he was sacked. They gave him quite a long time, to be fair. He was sacked in August. And in came Ramon Diaz as the second permanent manager of the season, and he's obviously still there. Top scorer, George. I mean, this is poor. Is so far as Yuri Alberto, who obviously they were close to losing in the window just gone, but they managed to keep hold of him. 4 goals only for Yuri Alberto. So that kind of speaks to the trouble at Corinthians. What are your thoughts on how they've been so far?
Terrible, James, really, like you said. I mean, you sat the manager, changed the manager. The only positive is that they're still in the cups, like you said, and they've got an opportunity. Yes, they lost the first leg to Juventude. I think it's a home tie on early doors Thursday morning, and see if they can turn that around. And the Sudamericana position, Fortaleza, obviously this season formidable opponents, but anything can happen. It's a cup game. You mentioned the poor form, of course, in front of goal. Yuri Alberto 4 goals. I think Kaká, the centre back, has 3 goals. And again, only 22 goals scored all season. That's amongst the lowest in the league. Only Gio and Fluminense have less than them. So, and Inter Nationale also have 22 as well. But, that's probably why they've bought in Memphis Depay, James. And I suppose we must touch on him as it's just happened in the last sort of couple of days. I just want to get your thoughts on this transfer, if you would, James. And yeah, I'm interested to hear what you think about this transfer, really.
I mean, it's an eye-catching one, isn't it? I think overall, I can see him ultimately being a player who comes over and basically isn't prepared for, what he's walking into. I think, I mean, Memphis has had a funny career, really, hasn't he? He's obviously broke out as a bit of a star in the making. We got his move to United, it kind of went downhill for him, and he's had bits and pieces where he's been really in really good form. At Lyon, he was particularly good. Last few years, he's kind of been bouncing around, and I just get the impression that it's a bit of a move. He's seen the name Corinthians, as he thought, yeah, fine, I'll have that. And I think he's probably not quite prepared for the league he's coming into and the team. And I don't mean that as a disrespect to the Brasileirão or to the Corinthians. I think it's just that he's probably got a different expectation of the reality of it. And I don't see how it helps Corinthians, to be quite honest, really. I mean, obviously, you look on paper, he looks like the best player in that squad instantly, one of, if not the best player in the league. But yeah, I just can't see how it works out. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I'm the same, James, to be absolutely honest. They're in a bit of a bad situation. Has he been well, he's definitely not been in a relegation battle in Brazil before, but has he ever been in a relegation battle? No. I don't think so. I think he's gone for a bit of a holiday, personally. I know he's only 30 years old and he's signed for just over 18 months, and he's till June 2026. So it's not like he's an old player going for like a last payday, but it kind of feels like that to me. Like you said, he's seen the name, he's seen, obviously, Sao Paulo will probably, with the wages on, which will be, very, very, a lot of money, I'm sure. He can have a nice lifestyle there, and from the outside looking in, for me, Memphis Depay isn't really that bothered about his football career personally. He's more into his rap career. I mean, you'll enjoy it, James. Maybe he's I know he's sort of like an amateur rapper, isn't he? So he seems to have maybe gone on to that side. I mean, I mentioned to you, didn't I, that documentary about La Liga on Netflix, and he was on there when it got to Atletico Madrid. And he was immediately, yeah, I'm a rapper. I'm a footballer. I'm a rapper, and he was talking about his rap career. And for me, it just stinks a little bit, he'll be good, but I just don't see, like you said, where it really helps Corinthians. I know the fans are super excited, and why would they not be? I think a lot of them are asking for his shirt number so they can buy the jersey. But for me, yeah, it just stinks of another player going there, and yeah, perhaps not expecting what he's actually going to get.
Yeah, it does stink a bit. I mean, it's amazing he is only 30, but yeah, it just speaks to the player, perhaps. I mean, you don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but perhaps personality-wise, a little bit how, he's obviously been available on a free, and a lot of clubs will have looked at him and thought, nah.
Yeah.
So, that does say
exactly.
a lot, I think. But if they get him on the pitch, he'll probably have a moment or two that makes it worth it. Perhaps, I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm not sure that's the best advert for Brazilian football. But anyway, did you give a rating for Corinthians there? I've got them down actually as a 4 out of 10, just because I think the cup saved them a little bit. You've probably been a bit more harsh about, haven't you?
Yeah, well, only by 1 point. I've gone for 3, and basically only better because of the cup. Yeah, basically because of the cup situation. They're still in there with a chance.
Yep. So obviously, I mean, we might do a rating at the end of the season, and that would have probably changed if they have won a cup or two. But for the moment, they do have work to do. George, another team with work to do, of course, who have been the story of the season in a few different ways, really, at least at the bottom of the table, is Fluminense. So still, with 12, 13, whatever it is, games to go, they are still in 16th, so they're sitting one place above the relegation zone. It's worth pointing out that they were 7th last year, so I know we speak about them as one of the biggest sides in Brazil, and they obviously are, but they were 7th, so they didn't set the world alight last year. The Copa do Brazil, they are out. They lost in the round of 16 to Juventude. The Copa Libertadores, of which they are champions, of course, George, they are in the quarters, so they've got Galo in there, so they're still in with a chance of back-to-back Copa Libertadores, although there is still a way to go. And in terms of manager, of course, as we know, they start the season with Fernando Diniz. He was sacked by June after a terrible run of form. And obviously Marcao was in between, who's a long-time employee. And then your mate Mano Menezes has been in since July and has turned things around a little bit. In terms of top scorer, they've got Kawa Elias, the 18-year-old who's been one of the young players of the season so far, with 5 goals. So, George, your thoughts on Flu? You've been quite scathing of them from the off this season. I think that'd be a good reason, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to give. Can I give them minus points, James? You know what I mean?
Well, if you want, I mean, yeah, it'd be unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with just not really half -1. You know what I mean? They've been terrible, really. I mean, it's horrendous. To think that you tipped them for the title. I mean, I put them in 3rd in my predicted table. So, I thought they'd do well as well. But yeah, horrible run of form towards the start of the season. Like you said, Mano has come in and he's done really well, to be honest. He's really, kept them afloat. He's got a few victories which has seen them above the relegation zone for the first time basically since the early knockings of the season, I would have said, James. They've been in it for a long, long period of time. And now they're out of it. I think they'll stay up. I think they're looking up now. But again, you can't say it's been a good season at all. The only shining light of it, maybe, is our boy Elias, who's like you said, top scorer at 18 years of age. James, his breakout season in the first team. He'll be absolutely delighted. And I know we're going to speak about Brazil towards the end of the pod here today, and he'll be knocking on the door, James. He'll be knocking on the door if he keeps up this kind of form. So, yeah, horrible season. But there's 1 or 2 shining lights. Obviously, Thiago Silva back in as well, which is a big plus for them. And next season, I'm sure they'll survive. They can go again. And the Libertadores are still in there. I don't think they'll win it, but they'll give it a good shot, If you can go double up on the Libertadores and stay up, then that's probably a good season, isn't it, at the end of which the circumstance would have found themselves in.
Yeah, well, by way of the way things have gone, for sure, it's a good season. I mean, a back-to-back Libertadores title it's a great result wherever you finish in the league, basically. As we said earlier in the year, I think it's all about survival for them. Write the year off and, do what you can and hopefully stay up. I think you're right. I think they will stay up as well, but they're certainly not out of the woods just yet. They're still right in there. But yeah, Manu's got them doing a bit better and certainly one or two shining lights in terms of young players. So yeah, lots to be positive about for Flu, but for sure it's been a shocking season. I mean, I've got them as a 2 out of 10, but just because, yeah, I mean, it couldn't have gone much worse, but they have pulled the socks up a little recently. So better days ahead, I'm sure, for them. But we'll see. There might be a shock still in store. From one underperforming team, or from two really, Corinthians, Fluminense, and the other one who are down there, George, of the really big size of Gremio. So Gremio are in 15th. And that's, that this is the biggest drop off of any team. They were second last year, of course, under Renato Gaucho. So in terms of their performances in the cup, it's again, there's been no saving grace. Corinthians are still in both cups. Gremio are out of both of them. They lost in the round of 16 in the cup to Corinthians, and they lost in the Copa Libertadores round of 16 to Fluminense. So two rivals who are right down there in the bottom of the table, who have both stolen a chance of a little bit of joy from them this season. Renato Gaucho is still the manager, so fair play to them. They have kept with him, and he's been there for 2 years now. So one of the longer serving coaches in the division. And the top scorer again, as we said with Corinthians, just not enough goals. I mean, Franco Cristaldo is the top scorer, and he's only got 4, George. So, yeah, disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, again, towards the bottom of the table in terms of goals scored as well, only 23 for Gremio, James. In terms of, like you said, the drop-off, it's massive, 2nd to 15th. I mean, I don't think they'll get relegated again, like Fluminense. I don't think they will. But it'll be mighty close, and I think they did the right thing, like I've said before, sticking with Renato Gaucho. I think, like continuity, like I've mentioned just now, is really important. You can't be messing about too much with it. I know they would have been very, very tempted to do that, but they obviously, didn't hit the trigger on it, and I think they were right to do that. They've obviously brought in Braithwaite, which was again a bit like Memphis Depay, probably not on the same scale, but was still quite a big name to bring in from European football, and he's done the business as well. I think he's got 3 goals as well so far, so he's been all right, and yeah, I think they'll be okay, but yeah, it's not good enough. Again, probably 2, and that's probably being quite kind.
Yeah, I mean, I've given them a 3 just because I don't know. I mean, the second I think was a bit of a false position for them last year. It was a funny season, and we shouldn't forget the season before that they were in Serie B. So I think probably it gave them a bit of a false sense of security last season. And I wouldn't say they're probably more where they should be, because I don't think they should be. I think they should be higher up the table, but I think probably looking at the squad, there isn't loads of quality in it. I think they were lucky to be second last year, basically. So I think, like you say, a bit of sprinkling of quality with Braithwaite. I mean, it just goes to show 3 goals already. He's already won off Cristaldo as the top scorer there for them. So, 3 out of 10 for me. Work to do, but again, I think you're right. I think they'll do enough to stay up, and their focus is fully on the Brasileirão. They're not in the cup, so they can focus fully on staying up, which might prove crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they'd do better than they are. I put them in 10th in my predicted final table. So yeah,
but again, it's not like you had them pushing the top. So
no,
and they are what they're only 5 points off 10th really at the moment. So I wouldn't say it's a mega drop off as it looks on paper. But yeah, for sure, it's been a poor season. Let's move on, George. Anyway, we keep on rising up the table. We can talk a bit more positively, I think, now. So 14th is Criciúma. And of course, last year they were promoted, so they were 3rd in Serie B. In the Copa do Brasil, they went out in the 3rd round to Bahia. And their manager is Claudio Tencati, who has been for 3 years now in October. So obviously the same manager all season, George. Their top scorer is our friend, Mr. Yannick Bolasie. So 6 goals. He's done well up to this point.
You still need to reply to me, Yannick.
Yeah, we've been reaching out to Yannick about a bit of an interview. So if you're listening, Yannick, then You know what to do, pal. But George, what do you think about
Absolutely.
Kashu?
Yeah, look, like you said, talking a bit more positively, James. Now as we're getting towards, up towards the top end of the table there. Well, as we go up, so yeah, a lot better than the previous few teams here. They've come up, they've held their own. Tenkati's done a really good job, like you said. Balassi, likes to score in sort of clusters, doesn't he? But when he scores, he scores a couple maybe, and a couple of nice goals. I think they've fitted in nicely into the division. And yeah, I'm going to give them a 7. I think out of 10 because I think it's been a really really good season. I mean, I had them bottom of the pile in my predicted table. So yeah, I've been really impressed with Kachuma, and I hope they can stay up and we can enjoy them for another season and beyond as well. I think they've done a really good job.
Yeah, I agree. I had them as a 7 as well. So I think maybe 7 might even be slightly underrating them because they have done a really good job. And I think, like you said, with you having them last, I think, a lot of people probably did back them to go down. But yeah, the Tigers, they've come out fighting and they've got plenty of quality involved in that team. And obviously a good manager who knows what he's all about and trusts his players. So yeah, I'm happy with Kachuma the way they are. I mean, you do have one eye on those 3 teams below them: Corinthians, Gremio, and Flu. Obviously, Corinthians are the one who you wouldn't expect to be in there. It does feel like maybe one of Kachuma or perhaps Juventude may fall in there, but for now they're still keeping their heads above water. So that's a nice segue into Juventude, who are actually exactly one place above them, George. So they're in 13th at the minute. They were second in Serie B, so they were above Kachuma last year as well. So yeah, 13th for now. The Copa do Brazil, like we said, they are still in it and they are leading 2-1 from the first leg against Corinthians. So they're in the quarterfinal and in with a shot at making the semis. And that's all the more remarkable given that they did change the manager, George, not through kind of their own decision, really. Many of these teams have sacked managers for underperformance. It wasn't the case with Juventude. They lost Roger Mercado when Inter came calling and picked him off. So they've had to make a decision on who to go with. They've gone with Jair Ventura, who obviously was at Gio at the start of the season. And he came in July and he's been doing a fantastic job, George. You'll be pleased to hear that the top scorer, or at least the joint top scorer in the Brasileirão, is our friend Jean Carlos, who has since doubled that opening tally of 2. He's on 4, as well as Lucas Barbosa. So, yeah, thoughts on Juventude? They've been going well, haven't they?
Oh, they've been doing fabulous, James. Like I said, like you say, I mean, in 13th, it's they've been. They can't seem to get any sort of sustained bit of form going. It's kind of like win one, draw one, lose another, win another one again. So it's kind of like in different form, but that's fine for them. They've just come up. They've spent. Well, actually, only just they came straight back up to Serie A, didn't they, after relegation in 2022? So, yeah, they've done fantastic. Ventura came in, like you said, they lost Mercado. They did have a bit of a dip of form, and you thought, what's going to happen now? But he's rose them up. He's kept the head above water. I know they're only 4 points above 17th position. It is very tight. It's very tight in the whole division, really. So it is anybody's game who's going to go down. But I've been very impressed with Juventude. Like you said, our pal Jean Carlos got the first ever goal of the round award on Talking Brazil Ball. So a little bit of a good, an important player for us in the pod. So yeah, it's good to see them doing well. And like I think we both like them really, and we both enjoy the kit as much as anything as well. And I had them down in just staying up, James, in 16th position. Sorry, in 15th position. So they're about where I put them. And like you said, hopefully they don't get sucked into the relegation zone, but it is quite tight. And it is anybody's game, really, with what they've got 13 games left. So still in the cup, like you said, though, again, that's an impressive feat as well. And up on Corinthians as well. They're very much in with a chance of getting to the semis. So good luck to them. I've been very impressed.
And a rating, if you would.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 8 out of 10, yeah.
Yeah, decent. I'm giving them a 9 actually, just for that Copa do Brasil performance. I feel like even if Corinthians do come back and knock them out, that's it's something extra that the fans have been able to ride on. So 9 out of 10 for me, and navigating that managerial change really well as well. So yeah, they may still go down, but they certainly won't go down without a fight if that is the case. So George, moving up to 12th, and perhaps a slightly surprise. Featuring 12th with Atletico Paranense, although they were 8th last year, so not a million miles from that position. In terms of the Copa do Brasil, they are still in that as well. They're in the quarterfinal, although they did lose the first leg 2-1 to Vasco da Gama. They're also in the quarterfinal of the Copa Sudamericana, so still in with a chance of that against Racing Club of Argentina. The manager, of course, they are another one who did change the manager. So your friend, I know you were a big fan of Kuka, weren't you? He was sacked in July, or he walked away, I think, didn't he, in July?
Yeah. He didn't get sacked. He walked out. Yeah, which was
Walked
really,
out.
really strange. Apparently, he was a Paranense fan as well, and he just kind of I'm not going to have it anymore. I don't know what happened really.
No, we'll have to get to the bottom of that maybe at the end of the season. But he obviously was replaced by Juka, the interim, which was funny. Kuka and Juka. He wasn't there that long. And then Martin Varini came in. So very young manager, of course. I think he's only 32 or 33, isn't he, Varini? Uruguayan manager, and he's been in since July. And the top scorer is also on 4 goals. So quite low scorers, really. Gonzalo Mastriani is a Uruguayan as well. So like his manager. George, your thoughts on Atletico Paranense? They've gone under our radar at times.
Yeah, I mean it's probably the team, James, that I would have said we've probably spoken about the least on the pod, really, and it's probably good reason. They're just mid-table, going about the business. Nobody's not pulling up any trees, really. I mean, that you said they finished 9th last season. I actually had them in 9th again this season on my predicted table. So I did like Kuka. I was really disappointed when he left, actually, because I thought they might do something special this season. I think I said to you at the start of the season, I think they're going to be a surprise package, and then I kind of backed down on it a little bit. But yeah, it's just been one of them seasons, and it pretty middle of the road. If they can salvage some kind of silverware with a Sudamericana, that would be a real, tasty end to the season. But I don't think they will do. Varini, like you said, he was 32 when he joined, James. He has since had a birthday and turned 33, but I think he is the youngest in the league. Probably the youngest manager doing it anywhere. Well, no, actually, there's the Brighton man, isn't he? But yeah, he's among the youngest managers probably in world football at the moment. And yeah, they're just a bit middle of the road. Like I said, there's not too much you can really say about them, to be fair.
No, I agree. And a rating, I think.
Yeah, 6, middle of the road. Yeah, nothing special.
I've gone with a 6 as well. I think obviously them still being in those 2 cup competitions, you have to give a bit of kudos to that. And they're not, although they are 12th, they're not far off, reaching up into the kind of the upper kind of top half as well. So they could yet have a good season, really. Varini needs to, if he can steer them forward, then they might have a better season. But at the minute, it's been slightly underwhelming, hasn't it? So I'd go with a 6 as well on that.
It has, yeah. I think as well, James, you say they're not too far from the sort of middle of the table, but there is a bit of a jump, sort of the cluster of about 4, 5 teams. What we're going to speak about now, obviously, it's the position of the table we're coming up to. There is a bit of a jump from 8th to 7th, which I think a lot of teams are going to find it hard to bridge that gap, really. So I think there will be the teams that we see now just sort of swapping and changing between like 8th and 12th, maybe, or 8th and 13th, maybe. Yeah, there's a bit of a gap. So we'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah, there's a cluster of teams here. The next 4 teams are all within 4 points of each other. So the first of those who we were a bit worried about in the last couple of weeks sliding down the table is Red Bull Bragantino, who've picked themselves up a little bit. They're in 11th currently. So again, another team who've had a bit of a drop-off, George. They were 6th last year. In terms of Copa do Brasil, they're out. They lost in the round of 16 to Paranense. The Sudamericana, they are also out and lost in the round of 16 to Corinthians as well. So another Brazilian side knocking them out. The manager they've kept with throughout the season, and they've kept with for 2 years almost now, which is Pedro Caixinha, the Portuguese manager. And their top scorer is a man we've mentioned a number of times on the pod, Helinho, who's got 7, and some of those have been really good as well. So what do you think about Red Bull Bragantino? Again, I mean, probably, as you can see from the position of the likes of Paranense and Bragantino, we've not mentioned them too much either. But again, it's a bit of a middle-of-the-road performance, or maybe a little worse than that, I would say.
Yeah, I think again, James, like you said, it is a team that we barely seem to touch on really in the pod on a week-to-week basis. I had them in 8th position, so just above Paranense in my predicted table. Obviously, they're 11th, aren't they? In at the moment, not far off, sort of middle of the road anyway. But yeah, again, not much to really say. I think the manager's obviously, like you said, been there a little while. I think they were very, very close to the relegation zone, only a couple of points above, but they got a really important win over Bahia last time out with that Gustavinho, which we spoke about last week, that injury time winner. So yeah, they needed it. They really, really badly needed it. It's been a really, not a good performance all round. I'm going to go with a 4, I think, for this one. It's not been good enough. I mean, given the Red Bull name, I think they expect their teams to be at least challenging towards the top end of these divisions, and they're obviously not doing that at the moment. I don't know really how much longer Caxia has, to be honest with you, James, if they continue to sort of give this sort of performance out. It's not good enough for me, to be fair.
Yeah, I've given them a 5 out of 10, so slightly better, but yeah, still a little underwhelming. And I think one thing I will say is they did end the season strongly last year. I think they were in a similar position and they had a late run, so perhaps they'll do the same. Another team who could do with a late run, Georgia International, my team Inter. So in 10th, I mean, again, it's worth pointing out they were 9th last year, so they're not far off kind of where they were. It's been a funny season for them, as we know, with the interruption with the Rio Grande do Sul, the tragic weather conditions. So, but again, it's not been great. I mean, the Copa do Brasil, they were lost in the third round, which was, I think, delayed. That was against Juventude. They were also out of the Copa Sudamericana already, which is a disappointment. They lost in the round of 32 to Rosario Central. So that obviously did for Eduardo Coudet, who started the season as the manager. He was sacked in July, and he was replaced by, like we've mentioned, Roger Mercado, who's had a bit of a kind of a difficult start, but he seems to have overcome it kind of in the last few weeks and is doing a little better. And their top scorer is Wesley, who's also a low kind of scoring forward with 5 goals. So, George, you've been, again, like with Flu, you've been pretty scathing of Inter at times this season. What's your assessment of them so far?
Well, yeah, I think they should be doing better, James. I understand, the tragedy, the experience, which was horrible. But we're well into the season now, and I know they've got a couple of games in hand. They're doing a little bit better. Only 1 defeat in the last 5, Brazilian games. They have a game as of recording tomorrow evening, which is another game in hand against Fortaleza. So that's a difficult one. But yeah, they've just been a bit underperforming for me and underwhelming, really. Because they had the tragedy to deal with, which was, obviously they dealt with it extremely well. But that's gone now. They need to start getting back. Everybody's starting to get back to normal in terms of the football. So, and that sort of maybe showed a little bit of sort of calmness and sort of the bit more settled. Maybe the team under Mercado over the last sort of month or so, maybe. And we sort of now seeing what they can do. They've got games in hand, like I said, they could rise up in the table, and I think they will do. I had them in 4th actually on my predicted table. I think they will rise up the table, which will salvage something from the season, which has been a horrible one overall, but it has been in very unlikely and circumstances that people couldn't imagine and predict at all. So, I'm not going to be too harsh. I think I'm going to give them a 5. I think they could do a lot better, which I think they will do towards the end of the season, but hasn't been good enough on the pitch generally. That's where we've got to focus it on, and it hasn't been good enough generally.
Yeah, I've got a 5 for them as well. I think I thought you might be a little more harsh, but I think they have had a few circumstances. I mean, we have to take into account they've not been playing at home for a chunk as well, and have to move around and things like that. So it's obviously affected Gremio as well. So I think 5 out of 10. I think you're right. They've got a bit of stability. I like Mercado as a manager.
I do.
He's very much a Gremio man. So I think the fans are still needing a bit to be on side, but I think they'll get there as well. Now moving up the table to your team, George. So our teams are side by side. Atletico Mineiro, Galo are in 9th. Again, pretty big drop off from last year. They were 3rd last year. They finished 3rd. They're in the Copa do Brazil quarter-final still, so there's still a chance of glory there. They won the first leg actually against Sao Paulo 1-0. They're also into the quarterfinals of the Copa Libertadores where they'll face Fluminense. So that's a big game. They've stuck with Milito, so Milito's been there all season. I know you've been calling for his head at various times. He's still got it. He's still in there. And he did well. He came in quite late into the season. Obviously, it's replacing Scolari, wasn't it? And their top scorer is Hulk, who's also got 7, who as well you've been quite scathing of. So what do you make of Galo? I mean, people will have listened to you talk about them throughout the season so far, and I know you've become a big fan of them, haven't you? So what are your thoughts?
I think scathing is the word of the pod, isn't it? This week, but wow. Look, they've been all right, in sort of it's middle of the road. It's I had them in 6th position in the predicted table, and look, when you think about it, James, Milito, like you said, it's Scolari who was following. It's a hard act to follow, Scolari, even though he might not get success at the moment, he's still quite an imposing character and a well-respected figure in Brazilian football. So it's very hard to come in and sort of take on that mantle of a team that, have very high expectations. He's for his first kind of job in Brazil, it's a big job, this one for him. And to say he's lasted the whole season, it's fair enough. I have been calling for his head on occasions because I think that they should be doing a bit better in the league, in the cups. Like you said, that's where he's being saved, James Milito, I think. And I've said it before. I think that's where he's being saved, basically. I think he's being saved. If they win a cup, then I think they see that as a good season. You've got to say, I'd have to agree. If they can win a cup and, I don't know, get sort of Libertadores qualification, even if it's 6th position in sort of where they have to go for a qualifying round, I think, James, I think that's a good season. It's just for me the league position is really disappointing. And for that reason, I'm going to give him a 5 as well. I think it's just not been good enough. But overall, you have to take into account that Milito is his first job in a really difficult and team that has really high expectations. You mentioned Hulk. I have been very critical of Hulk and I think it's been deserved as well. I think he's talking too much in the press and he's not doing too much on the pitch. He's constantly injured, which is not his fault really, but he seems to be suspended and out the team all the time, and he has been disappointing, and it's just one of them things. And then when he scores, like you think, and he comes out and says, this, that, and the other, and you think, yeah, come on now, we're going to rise up the table, and then they just don't. And then so frustrating, but middle of the road again, really, for them.
Yeah, I'm giving them a 6 out of 10. I think the cup competitions are certainly the ray of light for them this season. We'll see how they get on if they can progress. Up to 8th, George, and a team who have really kind of defied the kind of notion that if you sack a load of managers, then you'll have a poor season, because Vasco have done just that, and seem to have got better for it. So they seem to be in a bit of relegation trouble initially at the start of the season. They just seem to really ease away from it all at once, really. So, Vasco da Gama are in 8th. They were 15th last year, so they had a bit of a struggle last year. They're still in the Copa do Brazil as well, George, so they're in the quarters, and they did win the first leg against Paranense as we speak. So they weren't in continental competition. As I said, they did sack Ramon Diaz, who started the season as the manager. They sacked him pretty early on in April. Rafael Paiva did then come in as the interim, but was only there a couple of weeks before they hired Alvaro Pacheco, Portuguese. I think he was from Braga, wasn't he? Was he from Guimarães, from
He was
Vitória?
from Guimarães,
Yeah. So he was only there a month in the end. Some poor results did for him in June. And since then, Rafael Paiva has come back in and done an absolutely storming job. I still don't know if he's been given it permanently. I suspect he has now. I gave up checking. But
I think he probably has, James.
Yeah, he must have been. I mean, he deserves it. He's done a great job. Like I said, he's taken them away from relegation trouble up to 8th. Their top scorer is Pablo Vigetti, who's been very important as well with 8 goals, joint second top scorer in the league, which shows, how low scoring the league has been in terms of individuals this year. But Vasco have been quietly ticking along, having a good season, haven't they?
Yeah, but at this moment, James, at 8 unbeaten, like you said, Rafael Paiva's done a fabulous job. Only just turned 40 a couple of weeks ago, James. He's relatively young as well. And fair play to him, I think that's a really good appointment because he's obviously got the players playing well. I mean, they obviously had a big sign of them for themselves, didn't they? Obviously, Coutinho came back. Hasn't really had much of an effect on the team as an individual piece of, but maybe he has sort of worked towards results, but definitely not from individual stats. We haven't really seen a kind of any sort of special kind of involvement from him. But it's another man. Again, it's they rely heavily on the youth, and I think that's the really shining light for them this season. It's all about the youth for them. Paiva obviously trusts them, and like you said, they've kind of just effortlessly just rose up the table where they were in a little bit of trouble towards the start, and they did sack the manager at the right time, I would have said, and it's proved really fruitful for them, and they're in the chance now of maybe if they can, like I said, there's a bit of a gap between the next team. If they can just bridge that, then and break in to sort of 7th position, there's no reason why they can't get copper qualification for next time.
Yeah, for sure. I like them. Like you said, a lot of young players. We've spoken about them quite a lot over the kind of months, haven't we? JP, GB, Leandrinho, Estrella, a number of others as well that we've touched on. So, Ryan, of course, yeah. So, I like Vasco, and I'm pleased to see that they're having a good season because they had a really big club, and they haven't really kind of fulfilled the kind of the size of the club at times. So, nice to see him doing well. And for Paiva, as you say, a young manager still. Really looking like an excellent appointment. So, good form for them. A rating for them, George?
I'm going to go with 7. I think that's probably fair. And I really like the mix of sort of old kind of veteran professional players, a bit like Coutinho, Payet, these sort of players mixed with the young youth players coming through the academy. I think it's great. And I really like them as well, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm happy they kind of got the way away from relegation.
Yeah, a couple of Barclays men in there, perhaps. Especially.
Possibly.
So moving up then, George, like you said, there is a bit of a gap to 7th position, that cluster of teams. 5 points is the gap from 7th to 8th, and the team sitting in 7th, who perhaps a little disappointed to be doing so, are Bahia. So Bahia were just avoided relegation last year. They were 16th. Since then, they've kicked on enormously under Rogério Ceni. They're still in the Copa do Brasil. They're in the quarters against Flamengo. They did lose the first leg of that 1-0, but, something to hold on to as they go to the Maracanã for the second leg. As I said, Rogério Ceni is still the manager. He's been there for about a year now. And the top scorer, so they've got 2 top scorers on 6 goals, which isn't bad. Tassiano and Aviraldo, who we have spoken about, again, as a partnership in the recent kind of weeks. I know you're a fan of Ceni, George. How do you assess Bahia? It's gone a bit sour for them recently, but they've kind of steadied the ship a little, haven't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, you said it just there at the top of that little segment. They'll be disappointed to be 7th, and that just says something about the season that they've had. They started on fire, James, and really in amongst the top 4 regular for a long period of time. And it has dropped a little bit sour for them. The form's been a bit in and out. Again, they can't seem to get much of a run of positive form going. It's kind of lose one, win one, draw one, lose one. They can't get a run of a string of results together as such. So it has dropped off a little bit for them. Like you said, they are still in the Copa do Brazil. The second leg with Flamengo, which are, like you said, 1-0 down from the first leg, but they can easily turn that around. You know, they'll be positive about the chances. And I've been really impressed with them, James. And as you know, I'm a big fan of Rogerio Ceni as well and his substitutions. So yeah, I think it's been a great season for them. I mean, the City group, they'll again, like the Red Bull system, they will want a big return and for their teams and their clubs to be doing well in the divisions that they're fighting in. So again, I think they're only going to rise up the table but here as we go into coming years possibly. And I did have them down in 16th position. I did have them down to stay up as well, but they've exceeded expectation completely. I'm going to go with 8, score of 8 out of 10 for them. I think they've had a smashing season, and it could end with real triumph here. To be honest with you, it could even be a cup for them, James. It could win the cup, maybe. You never know.
Yeah, I'll give them a 9 just because they've turned it around so drastically. And like you said, they are still in the cup, which has provided them with a hope of a trophy as well. I think anybody who's playing a Talking Brazil ball drinking game, I think that they'll be taking a shot every time you say you like Rogerio Ceni's substitutions, and they'd also be taking a shot when I move on to the next team and they hear you say that Sao Paulo were your tip to be a surprise of the season. I think you mentioned it at every opportunity this season so far.
Go and get drunk, everybody. Go and get drunk and play a game of drinking. Because yes, you can have another shot. You can have another shot in a second.
Yeah, maybe listen to it on a Friday night, and you'll be well on your way to town, won't you? So Sao Paulo are up in 6th, George. I mean, maybe not a surprise of the season, but they're doing all right. They were 11th last year, so they have improved on that so far. Copa do Brazil, as we said, we're still in there. They lost the first leg against Galo 1-0, but they're still in there in the quarters. They're also in the quarterfinals of the Libertadores, which is, an impressive kind of feat. They're up against Botafogo, so that's not an easy game, but one that they'll probably look at and think they could do something. The manager, they did change. As we know, they had Thiago Carpini, who we spoke about a little while ago. They recognised it wasn't working very early on with Carpini. They got him gone, and they brought in Luis Zubeldia, who has done a good job since April. Top scorer is Luciano Neves, George, another man who we've mentioned quite regularly. So, yeah, Sao Paulo, your tip of the season. What do you make of them so far?
Well, James, I had them down as a surprise, So, yeah. I mean, actually, I had predicted them into 5th position, which was like a surprise for where they come last time in 9th, like you said. So it's a massive club, Sao Paulo. They need to be up there towards the top end and fighting for the honours of this division of the Copa Libertadores, in my opinion, as well. And yeah, it's been a good season for them, and I think Zubeldia has really taken it on and done a marvelous job. Obviously, came from Ecuador, didn't he? And they won the Libertadores, didn't they? His team, LDU de Quito, beat Fortaleza in the Sudamericana, in the final. They beat Fortaleza in the final, didn't they? So, yeah, amazing season for me. Really, really, really good. They're still in with a shot on a couple of fronts. I'm going to give them a 9, James.
Yeah, I think that's generous, actually. I mean, I'm giving them an 8. I think they've done well. I think they've obviously, in the Cup, they did win the Copa do Brazil last year. That's worth pointing out. So they're going for a back-to-back title. But yeah, I feel like they could be a little higher in the table. To be fair, they've had chances to move higher and they've kind of squandered it. They seem to be on the cusp of pushing into the top kind of 4 or 5, and they just don't seem to grasp that. But still, the chance is there for them. So yeah, Zubeldia, we do like, done a good job. I'm giving them an 8 out of 10. Moving into the top 5, George, and we're into with Cruzeiro, who I was actually surprised, even though we do these shows every week. I was looking at the table and I thought, flipping heck, Cruzeiro are really doing well. I mean, they've perhaps gone under the radar when we talk about teams of the season and that, because they were 14th last year. So as things stand, they've jumped 9 places, which is pretty impressive. They didn't have a good time in the Copa do Brazil. They were out in round 1, actually, against the third division side, Sousa, so that wasn't so good. They are still in the Copa Sudamericana, so they're in the quarterfinals against Libertad of Paraguay, who another Barclaysman, George, Roque Santa Cruz, is still playing for them, would you believe, at 43. So they'll come up against him. Fernando Seabra is still the manager. He was involved right from the start of the season. And their top scorer and top assister is Mateus Pereira, who has 6 goals, 5 assists. So that just shows you how crucial he's been, George. Thoughts on Cruzeiro? Again, I don't know if you were surprised to see him quite as high as I was. I don't know why I was that surprised, but...
Again, I was, like I said, we do it every week, James, but the Cruzeiro sometimes just go under the radar. I know we have covered them quite often this season, but yeah, I was surprised. They've done a great job again, to just kind of fly under the radar into 5th, only 3 points like Sao Paulo behind Flamengo in 4th. So they're well in the chance of getting Copa qualification. And it is not solely down to that man there you mentioned, but you've got to say that Mateus Pereira has been fantastic for them this season. He really, really big shining light for them. Obviously, former West Bromwich Albion player, watchers of the Championship will know, and the Premier League, of course. He spent a season in the Prem with West Brom. Will know him well, and he's continued his good form into Brazilian football. And Seabra just goes under the radar as well, and it's another team who have stuck with the man and reaping the rewards for doing so. And fair play to them. I do like them. I seen that kit that came out last week. Was it? Yeah, big fan of that one, James. The dark blue with a kind of granite kind of pattern on it. Very nice, yeah. But I would say in terms of rating for the season, I'd go with 8 again. I'd go with the number 8.
Yeah, I'll give them an 8 as well. I think really good season so far. Still can get better as well with the Sudamericana, and maybe they'll push on into that top 4. I think it's worth saying as well that all of the top 5 have kept their manager through the season. So, and Zubeldia at Sao Paulo has been there pretty much from the start. So that's, obviously, if the team's doing well, you don't sack the manager, but I think it also points to the fact that it's worth keeping these guys in the jobs a bit longer than they sometimes do. Up in the 4th, George, into the automatic Libertadores places, and Flamengo are in 4th, exactly where they finished last season, so no change for them so far. They are still in the Copa do Brazil, as we mentioned. They won the first leg against Bahia 1-0. They're also still in the Libertadores as well, so they're playing Peñarol of Uruguay with Montevideo, so that's a big game. Tite, the manager, has been since October last year, and the top scorer is the top scorer of the league, Pedro, with 11. But he, of course, will not play any more game time at all this season, because unfortunately he has done his ACL, George. So he's going to be out for quite some time. Won't play again this season. That's a big blow, isn't it?
It's a massive blow for them, James. You know what I mean? You think top scorer of the league. He always seems to get a penalty here and there, even if it's probably maybe not even deserved. That's just what he does. He's a quality finisher at this level, and he's going to be sorely missed for them. And the way behind in terms of winning the thing, I had them down to win it. I think I might have to revise that, to be honest. I don't think they're going to win it. I think they'll get Libertadores qualification for sure. I think they'll just have enough, although they didn't buy anybody in, I don't think, did they? Come the end of the transfer window, which I know they were looking at Anthony Martial, weren't they, of Man United? He didn't end up coming. I don't think they replaced Pedro. It's going to be a massive job to replace his goals in the last 14 games of the season. Like you said, they're still fighting in the Copa as well, and the Cup against Bahia. So they've got fronts to fight on, but I think it's just a bit disappointing they're in 4th position. I think they'll be disappointed with this. I'm actually going to go with a 6, James. I don't think it's been a good season for them, really, given the expectations that they will have. Pedro injury is massive, because he'll be out for not only the remainder of this season, but probably the majority of next as well. So it's a horrendous injury. They have to replace him for next season as well. And it's a real job they've got on their hands. Tite is a great manager, and they've got a great squad there, but it's just been a bit bit below par for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. 6, I think. It's just a shame for Pedro. It could be, it could be 10 months or so. So it could be, half of next season really that he misses as well. Gutted for him really, but Martial would be a really good replacement. I mean, he isn't of Man United anymore. He's a free agent, so
Oh, is he? Sorry.
yeah. So he could be obviously brought in for at any point at the moment.
Right.
So that might still be one they do. We'll have to wait and see. But they'll probably have to do something you would have imagined. On to another team who are probably underwhelming, disappointing, really, George, in third. Palmeiras are in third. Obviously, champions last season, champions the year before as well. Not on for a hat-trick of wins as we stand. They also, disappointingly, are out of both the Copa do Brasil and the Copa de Libertadores. They lost to Flamengo in the Cup, and they lost to Botafogo in the Libertadores. Two really disappointing results against title rivals. Abel Ferreira is still in there, although obviously we've spoken about him being a little under pressure. And their top scorer is, which says quite a lot, Mr. Estevão Willian, the 17-year-old, is the man who has been getting the goals and the assists as well, it has to be said too. So, George, your thoughts on Palmeiras? Hasn't been great for them, especially in recent months, has it?
Again, James, disappointing. Really, really disappointing. I don't see how it can be considered a good season for Palmeiras. The 3 points off the top, they might still win it. But I still even think then they might still be disappointed with the way it's gone. I mean, I'm giving them a 3 out of 10, James, here. I think it's just been so disappointing. They'll be out of both the cups. They'll have had aspirations to win both of them competitions at the start of the season. That have had aspirations to win the treble here, I would have said. Abel Ferreira has shot his mouth out so many times, which has contributed to my rating as well. He's been disrespectful to people, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago. He just doesn't seem, like you said, he seems so much under pressure. Estevão's a shining light in it, obviously, which is an unbelievable story. 17-year-old lad, capped now by Brazil. Fantastic for him. Obviously off to Chelsea next season. Next season, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he'll be in the Premier League. But yeah, for me, James, really, really disappointing season for Palmeiras. Although having said that, like I said, they could still yet win it with 13 games to go for them.
Yeah, it was a similar story last year where I think they came up a bit short, and then they capitalised really on Botafogo just throwing it away last year. So I think 3's a little harsh. I'm going to keep them at 5 because they are still in with the shout of winning it. And if you win a title, I don't think it can ever be considered a poor season. So, there have been some factors to think about. They've lost a couple of players, Luis Guilherme, Hendrick, these kind of guys have gone, so they've had to make do with that. I know Abel Ferreira has been raging about the refereeing decisions and some injuries and things, and but that's what you have to deal with as a top side. That's why you have a good squad, and I think the cup performances in particular will be a disappointment because they have won the Libertadores before under Ferreira, so they would have expected, like you said, to go for everything. 1 out of 3, I think, for them would still be decent, but I don't think they'll get it. But they are still in there, aren't they?
Yeah, they're still in and around it, James. But like I said, only 3 points off the top, so it's going to go right to the wire. But I think I know who's going to win it. Who's in my mind to win it? I had Palmeiras down a second, but as it stands, I think I'm pretty set on who's going to win. So, and I think probably you are as well, actually. But yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And it's not going to be the team we're going to talk about next, which is a real shame, I think. So Fortaleza, George, what more can we say about Fortaleza? They're in second, of course. They were 10th last year, so it's not like they were, in any trouble of going down. And like you said, they did get to the Sudamericana final as well. This year, they are still in the Sudamericana as well, so they can, do one better. They're playing Corinthians, I think. Are they in the quarterfinals? I think it's Corinthians. So that's an all-Brazilian tie. They've also got They're out of the Copa do Brasil. They lost in the third round on penalties against Vasco. The manager is, of course, Juan Pablo Voivoda, the man of the season, really. And he's been there for over 3 years now, so he's kind of well under the table at Fortaleza. The top scorer has been Juan Martin Lucero, who's had a good season, 8 goals so far. George, like I said, I don't think there's too much more to say about Fortaleza. We've spoken about them quite a lot throughout the months. They've been excellent, haven't they? What a season. What a story it could yet be.
Yeah, Fantastica. Or Fantastico. They've been brilliant, James, haven't they? Like I said, it's story of the season, really. Voivoda's had them playing fantastic football above all expectations. They will come close, I think, in this title race. They might still yet win the Sudamericana, although I don't think they will. The pressure showed, didn't it? I think against Botafogo last time out, where I think they got heavily beaten, really, despite the narrow sort of 2-0 scoreline. I think it was quite the quality was definitely on the Botafogo side. I think they did just fall short a bit, which is no disgrace at all to go there and get beaten. So, but overall, fantastic season. I'm giving them a 10, James. I'm going to give them a 10. I have to, really. There's no other score.
Yeah, I'm going 10 as well, George. I think you can't fault them. Obviously not perfect, as a 10 would suggest, but not far off it in football terms. I wouldn't have said, and could obviously still get better for them. So yeah, what a season they've had. What a story they have been. And you just wait and see. Obviously, there is still a way to go of the season. You just start to cast one eye towards next season, and you just wonder what expectations will be like for them heading into that. But for now, they're still fighting up there, and we'll see if they can push Botafogo all the way. But George, you say you've got it in your mind who you think will win it. I think we both agreed that perhaps Botafogo are the team to beat at the minute, and they are, as the table says, the team to beat. They are sitting atop of the table as things stand. 2 points clear of Fortaleza? They have played one more than Fortaleza, so that is something to bear in mind. But like you said, they did beat them recently relatively comprehensively. They were 5th last year, as I mentioned. They did pretty much throw it away. Anybody who followed that last year will remember that they just couldn't pick up any points in the final kind of 6 or 7 games. They had some unbelievable results go against them, and they ended up in 5th eventually, but they probably should have won it last year. Looks like they might do this year. They're out of the Copa do Brasil. They lost to Bahia in the round of 16. They're still in the Libertadores. They beat Flamengo in the quarters. They're playing Flamengo in the quarters. So that'll be a massive game. Is that right? Have I got that? No, sorry, they're playing Fluminense in the quarters. No, what am I talking about?
They're playing Sao Paulo in the Libertadores.
I wonder why I've written. Yeah, I'm looking at that, thinking that isn't right. Yeah, so they're in the quarterfinals playing Sao Paulo. You'd think they probably would win that as well.
Yeah.
So Arthur George, I know you've been a big fan of him. George, he's been there since April, of course. He's the manager, top scorer. They've got 5 players who've all scored 4 goals. Cuyabano, who is one of my favourites, has got 4 goals. George, he's the top scorer. Igor Jesus, who we spoke about last week. Savarino, who again we've touched on as well. Luis Enrique and Tiquinho Suarez have all got 4 goals. So not many top scorers there. They're sharing it about as a team. George, yeah, we think they're going to do it, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. And sign of a good team, James, sharing the goals around. Doesn't matter who scores the goals, as long as it goes in the net, that's fine. And yeah, Arthur George is the best manager in the league, I think. And for the standard that it is, obviously we don't, no disrespect at all to the Brazilian Serie A, we love it, but it's not the quality perhaps of maybe even the Portuguese league is with Braga, and he's had European exposure as well, hasn't he, in terms of competitions as well. He's I think a Europa League maybe with Braga. So I think he's the best in the league, and I think they've got the best squad personally, although Flamengo for me is very, very good. But they've done some real business. Teixeira, the American man and the owner, has really pumped a lot of money into it, and I think they'll do it. I think they will. Like Palmeiras capitalised on their downfall last season, I think Botafogo will capitalise on Palmeiras' sort of bad form this season, and I think they're going to do it, James. I think they're going to win it. In terms of rating, 9 out of 10. I think they've had near perfect. They're still fighting on the Libertadores front. Say in the cup as well, James. Still, no, they're not. They're not in the cup, but they can still, get a double, which would be fantastic for them as well. And I think he deserves it actually as well, Jorge, because he's come in and got them playing well. Winning games of football without much fuss. He seems to be enjoying himself as well. So, for me, they're going to be the winners.
Yeah, I agree with that. 9 out of 10, I'd say, just the way they bounce back from that. Obviously, the fans will have been deeply scarred by last season, and they've managed to. I mean, you never know. A similar thing could happen. I mean, it would be devastating for the supporters if it did happen, because they've waited such a long time. I can't remember when the last time they won it was, but it was a long time ago. So it's been a long wait for them. And if the same thing was to happen again. I mean, it was 1995, I think, the last time they won it. So, yeah, pushing 30 years now, 29 years. You just hope that they can see that through, because they have been the best team in the league. For me, this season, now we talk about Fortaleza, I think Botafogo have been that assured presence where you look at games and you just expect them to come through it. They haven't always, but, that can happen. I think they've been terrific as well. I think if it did happen that they imploded, I think the owner, like you say, Textor, I think he would explode. Basically, he had a few moments last year when he nearly did. So I don't think they'd be a too popular winner. I think that might be important. I think they are spending a lot more than other teams and this kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm not sure they'll be a hugely popular winner, but I think they're going to do it. So we'll have to see.
It's worth noting as well, James, they're in the third season since getting relegated from Serie A. They won the Serie B in 2021. So, and they've rose up ever since, 11th in 2022, 5th then in 2023 last season. Now it's looking like they might win the thing. So, yeah, like I said, maybe a bit unpopular, spend a lot of money like Man City maybe, but there you go. Money talks.
Yeah, it certainly does. And we think it'll be towing its way to a Brazilian title. So that is all the 20 teams rounded up, or their performances so far since April. It's been a kind of a long season, but we've really enjoyed the whole thing, haven't we, George? We were just going to touch on the Seleção, the Brazilian national team, but we are running out of time a little because I need to give a five-a-side. So just on the Brazilian national team, George, your reaction, they did beat Ecuador 1-0, which was a much-needed win. They're also playing Paraguay tomorrow evening. It was a goal from Rodrigo, I think, that won it early on into the game. Yeah. Not a convincing win, but an important one. And like you said, Donival Jr. was feeling quite bullish after the game, wasn't he?
I mean, Donival Jr. has come out with some comments, I think, was it today or whatever, saying we will be in the final of the next World Cup, the 2026 World Cup. I think the final's probably in America, is it? I don't know, because it's a dual host this time, isn't it? I think it's a triple host, isn't it, with Mexico as well. So I don't know where the final is. He thinks Brazil are going to be there, James. I don't agree with him, but then again, they're going to lean on players like, Vinicius Junior, Rodrigo, Endrick and Estevao probably at that point as well will be coming up. Look, they needed that win because I think the Brazilian public might be getting a little bit impatient with the team. And Donival Jr. messed around with it a little bit. I know he had the injury to Pedro to contend with. I think Pedro from Brighton came in his position. We obviously had Lucas Moura as well, which was a surprise to me to see his name in the squad as well, called up for injury sake as well. So, and Henrique as well from Botafogo forced his way into the team with his performances from Botafogo. Look, it's expected that Brazil beat teams like Ecuador. I know Ecuador are better than what they used to be, but you still expect them to win these sort of games. Again, against Paraguay in the early hours of tomorrow morning, you'd expect them to win, and I think Donival Jr.'s comments are a little bit, I don't know, was he drinking? Perhaps he was playing a drinking game. I don't know. It was certainly quite, like you said, quite a bullish, quite a sort of out there statement to say, really. 2 years prior, nearly 2 years before, and he's expecting them to be in the final. 100%, he said, we will be there, which is amazing, really.
It feels like it just puts a bit of pressure on him and his team when that's not really what they need at the minute. But we'll see. Like you said, hopefully they should beat Paraguay anyway. But we'll look forward to that. And we'll also, George, look forward to a new week of Brazilian Row, which starts, I mean, like you said, there is a game tomorrow, I think, possibly Inter, but there is another full round of fixtures starting on Saturday. So do you want to run through those just before we we explain our games of the week, just before we finish?
Yeah, absolutely, James. So tomorrow, like you said, Inter against Fortaleza, 11:30 p.m. English time. It is a game in hand. Saturday, the 14th of September, then the Brazilian Row resumes with Atletico Go against Vitória at 8 p.m., followed by Atletico Paranaense against Fortaleza at 10:30 p.m. On to Sunday morning, then Botafogo against Corinthians, 1 a.m. Juventude against Fluminense, Paranense against Criciúma, Red Bull Bragantino against Grêmio is all at 8 p.m. Then at 10:30 p.m, Bahia face Galo, Cruzeiro host Sao Paulo, and Flamengo host Vasco. And then to round off the match day, James, Inter play Cuiabá. That's midnight on Tuesday, the 17th of September.
That's great. So, George, your game of the week, please, just before we finish.
I'm going to go with Botafogo against Corinthians, James. I think that's an interesting one. I think Memphis Depay's first debut in the Brazilian Row, Botafogo going well at the top. The Corinthians need a win at the bottom. I think I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah, I think that one looks like a pretty good one, to be honest, as well. I think I'm going to go as well with, I'm going to go for a Rio derby. I'm going to look at Flamengo against Vasco. I think that's a big game. The Clásico de Milhões, I think that is the classic of the biggest fan bases in Rio. I think that's what that's supposed to be. So I'm going to look at that and see if, like we said, Vasco have been doing well, see if they can continue that, see if Flamengo can get back and make a push towards the top three. So yeah, should be a good one. A couple of good games, more action to look forward to, and like you said, maybe a bit of a debut for Memphis Depay. So lots to enjoy, George. It's been a good roundup, I think, hasn't it? So enjoy the game, the Brazil game. Enjoy the Brazil game, and enjoy the week.
Yeah, it's been a long one, James, hasn't it? So I hope everybody's got to the end and enjoyed it. But yeah, you enjoy your week as well. Catch you next week. Adios.
Yep, adios, everybody.
Bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right. Song by song, our vibes, we're dancing in the heat. Go, go, go. Can't be beat, talking Brazil, go spread love in there.